Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order of the City Council on July the 20th, 2021. We are in the Terrell City Hall chambers. Present is Mayrani Velasquez. Remotely is Grady Simpson. Absent this evening with an excused absence is Mayor Rick Carmona, and with an excused absence, Stephanie Holmes Thomas. We're going to ask Councilman Simpson to do the invocation for us, and we're going to do the pledge right after.
All right, thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. May we all bow our heads, please. Father God, we come with gratitude. We come with appreciation. We come thanking you for bringing us this far post-pandemic. We know there are still yet challenges to overcome. We ask that you will guide us and keep us as you always have. Help us to grow in faith. Help us to grow and love one another. Continue to guide our minds and our hearts in the city. And we all give this precious thanks to Jesus and our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
I pledge
America,
allegiance to the flag
and to the
of the United
republic
States
for
of
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Right, Council. Item number 4 is Mayor and Council Community Recognition. I don't believe we have any, as we also did that at the 5 o'clock. Item number 5 is adoption of minutes, and this is to discuss and consider the minutes from the special city council meeting and workshop on June the 15th, the regular city council meeting on June the 15th, the special city council meeting and workshop on June 22nd, the special city council meeting and workshop on June 25th, and the special city council meeting and workshop on June 29th. Do I have a motion after that review?
I move to approve the meeting minutes as read from item 5.1.
Okay, second? Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Let's see. We are going to hear remarks from visitors, if any. Okay. At this time, I'm going to move to suspend the rules, and we are going to take up items 9.1 first. And this is a discuss and consider FY20 audit. And it looks like Mr. Sims is going to provide some information.
So, Mayor and Council, just briefly, we are continuing work with Patilla Brown and Hill just due to the problems with COVID. Quite a few audits nationwide are delayed this year. Ours is no exception to that. There is a draft set of financials in your packet. I would only turn you over very quickly to agenda item page, to agenda item page 220 of 270, and you can see our unassigned fund balance. That's the number we like to pay attention to. That's how much money do we have available. Last year, that number was around $3.4 million. You see here on agenda item page 220. Down at the bottom, first column, now it's at $4.4 million. So we're doing a good job trying to restore some of our missing fund balance that we spent down over the last few years. So that's a positive step in the right direction. I will tell you that any flipping through of the audit you'd like to do, I'm available for questions, Jay's available for questions, but tonight, because it is in draft form, we are just going to ask to table the audit.
Okay, I will ask for a motion to table that audit.
I move to table the City of Terrell audit.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. In the spirit of still moving out of order, we are going to hit agenda item 9.2 and discuss and consider the COVID Relief Partnership Agreement with the Terrell Chamber of Commerce and Conventions and Visitors Bureau. Mike Sims is going to help us through this one.
So, Mayor and Council, we had a presentation from Carlton Tidwell with the Chamber of Commerce at our prior meeting. I think this is exactly what we need. I really appreciate their partnership and their hard work. If you take a look at the agreement, you can see it replicates what we did last year during COVID. Instead of looking forward to say, how do we help small businesses deal with COVID in the middle of COVID, this is more along the lines of how do we help small businesses recover from COVID. And it does have a list of, I think, about 10 different items to do. It has a list of advertising that they will be able to do as well. Of course, bringing more customers to Terrell is what it's all about. So it's heavily weighted on new advertising opportunities. The first payment goes to the chamber in October, but they actually can get started on this on August the 1st. Of course, we're excited about that. It does run through September 30th of 2022. I think a lot of people will be interested of, okay, $150,000 for the chamber to do small business promotion. That sounds like a good idea. Where's the money going to come from? This project has been vetted by our grant consultants already. It is eligible for American Rescue Plan reimbursement, so we'll be able to move forward on this project and get fully reimbursed under American Rescue Plan. I'm not sure, Carlton, if you've got anything you'd like to add, but I wanted Carlton to at least be here to answer any questions if necessary.
I'd be happy to answer any questions. I do appreciate the confidence that the council has shown us in the past to help business. And by the way, we start on it in the morning with a meeting with Trinity Valley Community College Small Business Development Group at the chamber. So we're at always ready to get started.
I think one of the most important things to remind folks who might be listening out in the internet world, it's not a program exclusive to chamber members. It's a service the chamber is providing citywide. And so if there's local mom and pops that never joined the chamber and they need help coming out of the COVID world, then they can go walk up to the chamber and say, hey, give me some help on this thing. And the chamber's there to be a resource to everybody, to help everybody. Same thing with the Spanish language element. We've got a large number of small Spanish language speaking businesses. They've got an outreach program available for that as well, and real proud of that.
Okay.
So thank you, Carlton, for being here again today and answering the questions we had last time. And I'd hate to say it, while I don't anticipate when I'm not necessarily the COVID-19 world expert here, but we are seeing a resurgence of COVID-19 with the Delta variant. And do you feel like this contract, considering what may come down the line, maybe hopefully not as bad as it was with the first series of COVID, do you feel that this contract would give you the flexibility to do what is needed?
Absolutely. And the reason is because we created the first one in the middle of COVID. So we know what to do depending on what the state of Texas comes down, because as you know, both the city and county followed the lead of the state of Texas in just about everything COVID related. We had already developed that program if we do get into a COVID situation, and we will monitor that every day. I do believe it gives us the flexibility because several of the things embedded in this contract were part of the original COVID agreement that we did.
Thank you. And I'll just, for my fellow council members, one more time, I'm glad to see that we have this contract that reaches all businesses, whether you are an existing chamber business, a minority or woman-owned business, a new business. So they'll be able to get the assistance that they need through here.
Great program. So council, this is a discuss and consider item. Do I have a motion on the consideration of the COVID Recovery Partnership Agreement with the Terrell Chamber?
That's just item 9.2 there, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, sir. Item 9.2.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem and Council, may I make a motion that we approve item 9.2?
Okay. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you, Carlton.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Okay, with that being said, we are going to jump back to our regularly scheduled program and start on 7.1. Mr. Finner is going to help us where it is a zoning item, and Mr. Finner is going to introduce it for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. We are going to conduct a public hearing on regarding a zone change from retail to planned development multifamily to allow construction of 300-unit multifamily development on 11.451 acres. As you know, at the Crossroads Parkway. As you know, this is basically phase 2 of the apartment complex that has been out there with Ventures Development as the applicant. The proposal this time around, last time we actually did an SUP because of the way the zoning ordinance was set up, and we did a specific use permit for that overlay. This time we're doing a PD, which is not much different. It's still an overlay, and there's still stipulations and development standards. This has gone through the Planning and Zoning Commission and has received a vote in favor of 8-0, so it's unanimous. We'll tell you, I think most of you, a lot of people from the council and the community have been able to tour the complex, and they have done an outstanding job. I think they've exceeded our expectations of what they were going to do. We were looking for quality in this, and it's always we're always a little timid when it comes to the multifamily product, and we know that this is a mixed-use project out here, and we know that this fit in well, but they did a very good job, and I think even in phase 2, they're stepping it up to add some additional quality. One of the things I do want to point out on this one, we'll have, there's going to be some office complex on each floor, residential units for the office use for the residents, and then they'll actually have, in addition to that, they'll have an office, a main office space of about 1,000 or 1,100 square foot in the clubhouse, and there'll be additional parking for that. Everything else, basically, if you move over into your ordinance, you'll see that your height regulations will be 4 stories. We do have the same, basically, the development standards that we had before, same landscaping, a lot of the same landscaping, and impervious coverage. But again, the big issue here will be the actual office space that they'll be located on the residential units. That'll be about a total of about 1,300 square foot for the total of 4 floors, and then the 1,100 square foot. That gives us a good opportunity to have that mixture of use and the work from home opportunity. 100% masonry construction, the brick veneer, the exterior plasters, and so forth. We went through P&Z, and this project didn't take too long. I think the applicant is here, and I think he can talk a little bit more about it. However, we do know that it did exceed our expectations above market rent, that we were really wanting to get our rents up there for our transitional living out at that area for our mixed use, and I think they exceeded that. And then it had a big waiting list too. So, of course, you'll have the landscape buffers, the perimeter buffers on the interior parkways, and the actual perimeter of the property. So staff recommends approval. P&Z did recommend approval by unanimous vote.
Okay, this is great. Most of us did have a chance to tour it, and I would say, hey, thank you for providing such a good quality product, right? And we know phase 2 will be of that same caliber or better. So it's great to work with someone that doesn't take a lot of arm twisting to provide quality. So kudos to the developer. So with that being said, we're going to open a public hearing We're going to now conduct a public hearing to receive comment regarding a zoning change from retail R to planned development to allow construction of a 300-unit multifamily development on 11.451 acres out of the John C. Hale Survey Abstract Number A202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as Crossroads Parkway, PD 21-03. This public hearing is now open. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of this zoning change? Please come up and state your name and your address.
Thank you. Name is Rob McConnell. Address is 1665 Keller Parkway in Keller, Texas. Thank you for your time, and don't want to take too much of it. I think you guys have seen the site plan. I think it's part of the package. The only other thing I wanted to show you was kind of the first draft of the rendering. I'd mentioned in the planning and zoning meeting that we want to make this a little bit more distinctive from phase one, and we intend to do that. This is kind of the first pass, and we're just getting into some of this design, but we're anxious to get started. We think we're filling a good need here, and it's the apartments are leasing very, very quickly, so we're very pleasantly surprised at how quick people are moving in from out of town and filling up the apartment. So mainly I wanted to answer any questions, but that's all I had, if there are any.
Mr. Simpson, any questions?
Fantastic job. Love it. Beautiful.
Councilwoman.
I am curious because we had an opportunity to do the tour with you and have heard not only good things from, of course, the company, but also those that have been renting out the spaces. We talked about working from home and how much that has changed in the pandemic and how we'll expect it to change. From what we saw when we walked into the apartment building and in the bedroom, the apartment itself, is there anything that will be a little different than in phase two regarding kind of the work from home aspect for those that will be tenants?
We haven't gotten that level of detail yet on the individual unit plans. I think it's something that we will discuss. I think the jury might be out a little bit on, how much of a shift we're seeing from people working from home as opposed to going to the office. You read really different opinions and a lot of anecdotal type proof on, whether people are staying home as opposed to going to the office. As you know, we are providing some live-work units, and we absolutely believe that those will fill up, not only the units, but the office space that will be in the clubhouse. So that's the best answer I have for you on that.
Thank you. I did see the information about the clubhouse and wondered, as a work from home worker myself, how much privacy that will provide those working from home, and will that be a factor for maybe not, both those individuals that are already working from home, that already live in the community, but kind of also a different level of residents that we may be trying to attract to the area if they had that flexibility.
Yeah, well, as far as the commercial space in the leasing office, we're going to design 6 to 8 different spaces that they will have complete privacy. A door just to their office, and then we envision kind of a glass front, just from a design standpoint, but from a privacy standpoint, it'll be 100%. So we think it'll be a nice environment, to be there part of the clubhouse, and then be able to use all the amenities, overlook the amenities. So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think what's exciting here is there are other projects, other builders who do what I would call the full-scaled shared away from home office space. And there's a lot of shared office products going on out there. And I want to say that's not what the idea here is, right? The idea here is I'm renting an apartment in this apartment complex, and I'm partly attracted to live in this apartment complex because I'm a work-at-home worker. and I'm going to avail myself of the opportunity to have some space where at least I walk out of my front door in the morning and I walk up to the clubhouse and I access one of the spaces that's built in the clubhouse. I can do that. Or if I'm a person who occasionally has folks come to my office, maybe I want to rent one of the live-to-work units because that's going to make it easier for an occasional visitor to come by and work with me if I happen to have an occasional person come to the house. So there's a really interesting design for that. I think they've done an excellent job meshing a small amount of office with a great residential location.
Well, thank you for being here today, and I'm in favor of the project at this moment, and I look forward to seeing no less than what you've already presented.
Okay, very good. Hey, thank you. Okay, is there anybody else here to speak in favor of this item? Okay, with that being said, is there anybody here to speak in opposition of the item? No one coming forward. The public hearing is now closed. 7.2 is the companion item to 7.1. It is a discuss and consider ordinance number 2870, and Mr. Shumpert is going to help read the rest of it into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We bring to you tonight ordinance number 2870, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, providing for the creation of a planned development highway corridor multifamily, PD 21-03. Under the provisions of Section 31A, Appendix 2, zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell on certain real property described as Lot 1, Block 1, Crossroads at Terrell, Phase 3B, consisting of 11.451 acres of land out of the John C. Hale Survey, abstract number 202, Kaufman County, Texas, and more particularly described by meets and bounds on the plat thereof, attached hereto as Exhibit A, and under the terms and conditions specified in Exhibit B, both of which are made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Very good. Mr. Finner, do you have anything to add to this? And then I should also say, so this went to planning and zoning, I believe, on the 24th and passed.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thumbs up.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to know on the item?
We recommend approval.
Okay.
So is P&Z.
Okay. Beautiful. Okay.
They will submit, as you know, next steps, construction plat, public improvements, final plat.
Okay.
So
Great.
You'll see that piece again.
Good. In the spirit of moving forward, this is a discuss and consider item, so I will take a motion on ordinance 2870 if there is one.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2870.
Okay, motion by Grady Simpson. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, motion passes. Next item. Item 7.3. We are going to conduct a public hearing regarding a request to amend a specific use permit to allow Platinum Chevrolet Cadillac to operate an auto dealership on a property currently zoned as Retail R, amending to include additional 11.834 acres to allow the construction of a freestanding auto dealership to be built similar to the adjacent Chevrolet Cadillac dealerships and parking lots. This property is located generally west of 148, being 11.834 acres of land conveyed to Terrell 8020 LDT and recorded in, deed of record of in Kaufman County, being in the John Hale C Survey A202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, SUP 20-01, passed on July 20th. Ordinance, the original ordinance was 2841. And this item is Mr. Finner's.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We may want to stop right there. This gets a little confusing. So all we know is that Oscar, Mr. Oscar here, he would like to build a 500 square foot flag. So that's a joke we had in the first PD. Essentially what we're doing is we're taking, there's been different ownerships here. So Terrell 8020 would be your crossroads development, the Allens that you've seen here before as applicants. They sell property, and in order to sell property, we have to have a final plat, which is basically a conveyance plat. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But this is what happened with this particular piece of property. Mr. Gilchrist was purchasing this property, and in order to purchase it, he needs this SUP for a car dealership, which we already have an SUP on the existing tract that's just to the east of here. So what we're doing is we're taking that SUP and we're amending it to cover this additional acreage. And that's essentially what's happening to make it simple. There are development standards. There is an ordinance that you'll discuss and consider after this. The development standards are basically the same. Things to point out on those standards are there will be a landscape, not just a buffer, an interior parkway buffer, but there'll be a perimeter buffer since we had some trade-offs with the trees because of the parking spaces and the parking of the cars. So that's a big deal to us. We'll have a entryway feature that they'll be doing 3 flagpoles and some other landscaping there. But what we'll be doing is adding this western piece of property into that acreage, and so you'll have approximately a total of 26 acres that has an SUP and a specific use permit overlay on it to have a car dealership. And this is the process that we have to go through. The one thing that we'll have, you'll see the landscape requirements. They're part of the site plan. It's hard to read, and building facade requirements. They have these elevations, the front entry, the perimeter screening, and so forth. They'll have a separate sheet that they submit to us during this process for the signage and the landscaping and the circulation of the property, so we'll see that. However, there is going to be more process to this. This is just the entitlement of this property. And if you can recall, even on this agenda, we have a construction plat of one of the properties and we have a final plat of one of the properties. So there's still a lot of things moving. But right now, we need to get this entitlement on top of that property to allow the use of the car sales. And that's what's before you right now. Okay. So. The recommendation is the approval amendment to the SUP 2001 Crossroads at Terrell Phase 3A to include additional 12 acres adjacent to the existing SUP as per the conditions submitted and posed by the specific use ordinance for the total of 26 acres.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fenner. Okay, council, we are going to take this as a public hearing, up or down, and then I'll ask you to hold any questions till the next item, which is 7.4. So in the spirit of that, we're now going to open the public hearing to receive comment on 7.3. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of 7.3? If you want to.
My name is Oscar Mokamkar. Reside in North Dallas, and I'm the architect on these 2 projects. So if you have any questions on them, and we've Ford and Chrysler across the road, so these are going to be good looking.
Okay, very good products, and we're going to hold questions just for a minute. Is there anybody else here to speak in favor of this item? Is there anybody here to speak in opposition of this item? Okay, public hearing is closed. 7.4. This is the discuss and consider part of this ordinance, which is 2871. Mr. Shumpert's going to help us out with the header.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We present to you tonight and bring to you tonight ordinance number 2871, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending specific use permit number 20-01, SUP 20-01, previously granted to Crossroads at Terrell to include an additional 11.834 acres of land in the John C. Hale Survey, Abstract 202, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, for the purpose of permitting the construction of an automobile sales and service dealership as shown on the survey thereof attached hereto as Exhibit A and made a part hereof for all purposes under the terms and conditions specified in Exhibits B, C, D, E, and F, attached hereto and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Okay, great. Mr. Fenner.
Okay, so you have it there, the ordinance to amend the existing SUP. We will require that after the SUP is approved, if it is approved, that we will need to go through the process of development, which is all through a construction plat and final plat, public improvements, and so forth. The commission did vote 7-1 to approve this, and staff recommends the approval of the ordinance.
Okay. Questions?
Yes, thank you, Fenner. There was one commissioner that voted no. Who was that commissioner, and what were the questions or concerns regarding this item?
I believe Mr. Jones, and I'm not sure all the questions, but I do think that there are some people that would love to see a Costco and Target out there, and I think that's always going to be on people's mind. But I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth. But
Didn't express anything specifically regarding his vote?
no, ma'am.
There's a lot of land out there, and we would like that too, Mr. Fenner. So,
Yeah.
so
This is, remember, we do too, and I think we talk a lot about that, Sims and I, Mr. Sims and I, and then strategizing some of the roads and cutting off some of the roads and things like that. But this is an allowed use, and it does fit in a lot of times with mixed uses, and we do require the SUP, so we do require that additional step, not just a generally granted permitted use, so it has to go through this process. So we have the opportunity to look at some of the circulation and how it connects to the overall development, because we would love to see that too.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Simpson, any comments or questions?
No, sir.
Okay, and then I would just say, just as a point of privilege, council, if you ever want to look at a great plan, this would be the item. You have elevations from every side. You have schematics on the sign. You have schematics for the parking lot. You have detailed presentation of what the plans are. You see what the medians are. You see the value the project adds. So going forward, I would say, hey, this is a good thing to expect from people. So just engrave it in your mind. This is good quality, and hooray for this project.
I'll tell all of our applicants to hire Oscar.
Yeah, yeah. Hire Oscar.
Although it took a year and a half, just to
It's fine. Beauty takes time. Okay, so with that being said, this is a discuss and consider item. I will take a motion on 2871.
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 2871 on first reading as presented.
All right, we have a motion. Do I have a second? I, Tim Royce, will second it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, that motion passes. And we will check on Mr. Simpson. Okay, council, we are going to take a 5-minute recess.
Of having a brief recess, so we're going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Royce to bring us back in session here in just one moment, and you'll hear him when he does that, and then after that, we're going to repeat the prior vote.
We weren't sure you were there on that last one, Grady, so we want to make sure that you get your vote in.
Yes, I was there on the last one, and I'm all in. I approve, so.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. And there's working on my notes. We have ended the recess. We're now back in regular session. We are going to now take a vote on item 2871. Is there a motion?
I make motion to approve ordinance number 2871 on first reading as presented.
I believe the councilwoman's microphone was off, so I'm going to repeat it. Her motion was, she made a motion to approve 2871. Is there a second?
All right, second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, motion passes. Aye, I vote aye also. Okay, motion passes. We will now move to 7.5. We will conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a zone change from highway corridor to commercial to allow a new building for office and truck maintenance shop on 3.114 acres out of the Thomas F. Smith Survey Abstract Number 493, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as 12147 FM 1392, Terrell, Texas, and Mr. Finner is going to co-pilot this.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We have before you 3 acres that the applicant is requesting to be rezoned. Currently, it is highway corridor, which is one of our top zoning districts in the zoning ordinance that allows for certain uses, a lot less intense uses than the actual commercial uses. Requires a lot of setup for parking, for new structures, and a lot of landscaping and buffering. This particular gentleman owns property out off 1392, just north of 80. You'll see in your packet. He is wanting to establish a truck maintenance shop, and the highway corridor does not allow that. The commercial zone is the closest zone. It will allow that, but you still have to come back with a specific use permit. So the only extra protection you may have there is an SUP. We do not recommend the zoning change, the commercial zoning. The property allows for a number of different uses. So if this property is zoned to commercial, it stays zoned commercial. If it sells tomorrow, it can stay commercial. If it doesn't, if it sells a year from now, it'll be zoned commercial, and there's a lot more heavier intense uses. We believe the highway corridor is the best zoning for this property. The future land use designation of light commercial retail office, which is also a highway corridor transitional piece, has the attributes of that highway corridor zoning, so it wouldn't meet that standard either. The zoning, the planning and zoning voted to deny the request with a 6-2 vote, and we recommend that the council deny too.
It's okay. We will hold council questions till the next item, and we're just going to open the public hearing. We will now open the public hearing to receive comments. Any of those in favor of this project, please step forward. Anybody opposed, please step forward. The public hearing is now closed on this item. Item 7.6 is the companion item to this. So let me get it straight, Mr. Finner. The ordinance would enact the zoning change,
That's correct.
right?
If approved.
If approved. But staff and planning and zoning, because it is zoned highway corridor, planning and zoning denied the request.
Right.
And staff is not recommending it because it's just not in our comprehensive plan. So with that being said, passage of this ordinance would go against the recommendation.
And in do that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, it requires a 3/4 vote of the city council to overrule the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Yeah, it would have to.
I think the record-keeping thing that we've done in the past would be to accept the P and Z's recommendation to deny. So you're stating it as a positive, you're voting, yes, we accept. And when you vote, yes, we accept the recommendation to deny, then you have agreed with P and Z to deny it.
Okay, we are not accepting the ordinance, no.
Do not accept the ordinance, just say, I accept the P and Z's recommendation on this project, recommendation to deny.
Okay, council, is there any action taken on ordinance 2871? As we have talked about, it was denied from the Planning and Zoning Commission. What say you?
I move to accept the planning and zoning recommendation to deny the zone change as requested in item 7.5.
All right, the councilwoman made a recommendation to approve the recommendation of the denial. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all those in favor of that denial signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Denial passes. Item 7.7, getting ahead of myself. We're going to conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a zone change from agricultural to executive estates on 83.047 acres out of the SA and MGRR CO Survey Abstract A523, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, also known as Farm to Market Road, 986, Terrell, Texas, CZ 2104. And looks like Mr. Fenner's going to talk about this one for us.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is 53 acres just north, if you recall the hillside addition, the Ted Zeta, the white property that we rezoned, and we went through a plan development for a good while. We worked on that with the WIT, that will actually have the WIT Ranch Parkway extended and so forth. This property adjoins that. It's just off Zajac Drive too. The actual call out for this is low density, and so it's simple. It meets the zoning, the land use requirements. We will have a simple developer's agreement on the property with the applicant, with the owner. There will be a few 1.5 acre lots on Zajac Drive as we transition in, and then 1 3-acre lot on the property. And the rest will be developed as a 3/4 acre subdivision. We don't have a layout of the property because the applicant or the owner of the property is just getting a entitlement onto the piece of the property. The reason we're doing an agreement is that we didn't want this development just to have one entrance through Zajac Drive, because that's not what the road was made for. So the access point through Zajac Drive had to be figured out, and so what we'll be doing is working with the applicant when this property is developed to tie around into the WIT Ranch Parkway, and when that subdivision, the plan development that we're working on with the Ted Zeta property is developed, there will be a road that extends through this property too. And so with all that said, it's easy. It meets the comprehensive plan. It's an executive estate zoning. We like that. It's low density call out through the land use plan, and we recommend approval, and so did the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay, council, we're going to open the public hearing, and we're going to ask Mr. Fenner questions on the next item. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing to find out if there's anybody here to speak in favor of this item. None coming forward. Is there anybody here to speak in opposition of this item? None coming forward. The public hearing is now closed. Item 7.8. We are going to discuss and consider ordinance 2873. Mr. Shumpert is going to help read this into the record.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Pro Tem, members of the council. We bring to you tonight ordinance number 2873, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell by changing the zoning classification on certain real property more particularly described as 83.047 acres of land out of the SA and MGRR Survey, Abstract 523, Kaufman County, Texas, as shown on the plat attached hereto as Exhibit A, and made a part hereof for all purposes from agricultural, AG, to Executive Estate EE under the terms and conditions specified in Exhibit B attached hereto and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for severability and providing an effective date.
All right. So once again, we have Mr. Finner, and I would say, council, this is certainly it's been passed by planning and zoning, and what a great thing to get more executive estate lots. These do come with a minimum square footage of 2,600 square feet per house. So it's just a good addition to our zoning in town, and Mr. Finner's gonna add to this.
Yeah, so you made a great point. The executive estate are, the minimum requirements are 2,600 square feet. There's really not too much. I mean, it is zoned ag at this point in time, but the land use calls it out for low-density residential, which would be the estate lot. So we think in time, the proper owner that comes through, the proper buyer that comes through will be able to work out a nice development with them. And so we just suggest that you accept the P&Z recommendation of 8-0.
Very good. So with that being said, council, this is a discuss and consider item. This is ordinance, we're on 7.8, and it is ordinance 2873. Do I have a motion on 2873?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, may I make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2873?
Right, I have a motion from Grady Simpson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. We are now moving to item 7.9. 7.9, we're going to conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding a zone change from light industrial to planned development, which is PD-HC to redevelop on 9.29 acres, Lot 3, Block 1, Randall No Addition, City of Terrell, Kaufman County, also known as 100 State Highway 205, Terrell, Texas. Mr. Finner.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a rezoning from light industrial to PD highway corridor. We were always in favor of getting things out of light industrial that are in corridors that we can develop commercially. I think the council is all familiar with this area. It's the old Walmart buildings where the Tractor Supply is. It's a total of 9.29 acres. The applicant is requesting the zoning to be zoned to planned development highway corridor. Our highway corridor requirements are 10,000 square foot, and those things meet the requirements. You'll notice just north of theirs is 7.5 Ben Gill Park. South is light industrial. To the east is commercial. To the west is light industrial. We always we've talked about this area for a long time as a good redevelopable area. It's high traffic. It's a great location, good intersection, and this is an opportunity for us to do that. You'll see in your packet, the planning and zoning approved this zone change 7-1. And you'll also see in your packet, as far as the plan development, as you know, excuse me, all the plan developments will have development standards that go along with the actual ordinance. So it won't just be a straight ordinance change in the zoning. And you can see in your packet that there are some development standards for the property as it is related to the facade and for the use of the building and what can be in there and so forth. That is on page 137 of your packet, and it will establish some minimum development, some landscaping. Some of this stuff will come later as they're trying to get the entitlement to the property so they can know that they have the right to use it for what they need to use it for. Some of the stuff may be submitted later, again, for the landscaping, the site circulation, and so forth. There are some things in this PD that talks about the site plan requirements. I hope you had a chance to read it. If you didn't, I'll be glad to answer any questions. There's allowable uses, and there's some major anchor requirements. As you know, there's a tractor supply in that building right now, and that will remain, and then the use of this applicant will have the eastern portion, and then there is a major anchor requirement of at least 25,000 square feet to be built for a well-known national or regional storefront brand name. Facade changes will need to be done, some height changes will need to be done, and so forth. And then some additional regulations for 100% masonry, standards, talks about the outdoor storage and so forth. And as you go through past the PD, you'll see the site plan that they've submitted for the parking lot and some of the facade changes and the signage and so forth. Again, P&Z recommended approval 7-1. And I'll be glad to answer.
So Mayor and Council, I'm going to pitch in a bit here because this is a bit of an odd duck of a project. There's a good news and a bad news with some things, right? So the good news is we're taking away a very large number of very negative uses that you can do under light industrial. And I won't belabor that list, but if it's tough, gritty, dirty, messy, it's the kind of stuff that you do under light industrial. So you might think of the dealerships out there that sell used shipping containers. Well, you can do used shipping container sales out there at this location now. We're getting away of allowances for negative uses. We're moving away from some negative land use potential there, and we're exchanging that for an allowance on only the southeastern 100-foot of the existing building to do a store that will have liquor sales. It's titled Beverage Depot. The owner is the owner of the Beverage Depot chain, and he's agreed to some language out there that frankly I've had a suggestion from council of before, that when we do have somebody come in for liquor sales, that we try to make sure that they have a positive appearance and a positive way that they look. So Beverage Depot is frankly just copying the aesthetic of an office depot, and they are just putting the word beverage and depot out there. They've actually agreed to language in their zoning requirement that says they can't use the word liquor, spirit, wine, beer, adult package, or drinking. So that's a pretty unusual step, and so we were glad that they were willing to be modest in their request and not try to be flashy and in your face. And we're very happy that they were willing to give up all of the potential negative uses of the property. So I think it's a mixed bag, but it's a positive net for us, and it's a great way to get a 75,000 square foot building redeveloped. Those buildings, they're old Walmarts, don't always look good in some of our neighboring communities. They become problems and eyesores and difficult things to manage. This is an opportunity to get another good user over there by Tractor Supply. So I know that's kind of a lengthy little add-in to Mr. Fenner's presentation, but I did think it was important to just kind of throw that little bit of commentary in there.
Okay, very good. With that being said, we are going to open the public hearing to receive comment on 7.9, as Mr. Fenner and Mr. Sims have talked about. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of the project? No. Is there anybody here to speak in opposition of the project? With no one coming forward, the public hearing is now closed. The companion item to this is 7.10. It is a discuss and consider item of ordinance number 2874. Mr. Schumpert is going to help us out with the reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We bring to you tonight ordinance number 2874, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 2 zoning ordinance of the City of Terrell by changing the zoning classification on certain real property, more particularly described as Lot 3, Block 1, Randall No Addition, in addition to the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, and also known as 100 State Highway 205, Terrell, Texas, as shown on the plat attached hereto as Exhibit A and made a part hereof for all purposes from light industrial, LI, to planned development /8 highway corridor, PD-HC, under the terms and conditions specified in Exhibits B, C, D, and E, copies of which are attached hereto and made a part hereof for all purposes, with an additional attachment to Exhibit B to read as follows. Signage shall not be placed in a public right-of-way or easement. A side yard setback shall be provided and maintained within 15 feet of the southeastern boundary of the district, subject to review and adjustment by the Municipal Development Director. Within this southeastern boundary setback, no building, no structure, no parking, and no outside storage shall be allowed. Limited fire access, cross-access, and parking may be approved by the Municipal Development Director within this southeastern boundary setback, after such time as the city performs any improvements to remove pavement and provide a landscape buffer area in the southeastern side yard setback. Such area shall be maintained as a landscaped buffer area of same or similar quantity by the owner. Also, providing for severability and providing an effective date.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Shumpert. So council, this is discuss and consider item number 2874. Is there a motion?
Before making a motion, since we have the exhibits C, D, and I believe maybe E on the screen, I was hoping that our city secretary, Don Stow, would take a moment to just scroll through those to review, what the exterior of and landscape of the building is.
So I'm going to ask you to start on Exhibit C. And Exhibit C is site plan. So site plan's looking down on it. You can see in the big white chunk is the roof of the old Walmart building. There's some lettering there in front of the Tractor Supply, which is on the north or the top side of this map. And it says existing Tractor Supply parking remains. We don't want to make any commitments. The applicant does not want to make any commitments on an existing lease held by Tractor Supply. So there's a number of details here that essentially leaves Tractor Supply untouched. They add a center walkway down the middle. That doesn't exist right now. You might think of that as a pedestrian safety zone. They add lighting in there as well, and then you can see the green on the I guess I'll call it the southwestern portion of the site. That's actually the area that's right up against the TxDOT right-of-way. And then that's the area where there'll be some trees added by the applicant as part of their building permit process. And you can see the sidewalk that runs along through that area as well. Then you can also take a look at the boundary area, which is essentially the area that Mr. Shumpert described. That's going to be the bottom part of the page, and it's going to be the southeastern edge. So right off the edge of that is the area that is the old Ford dealership, and so that's where the ownership line ends. But the city owns a 15-foot easement from well, basically all along the bottom of the page there. And so that's the area within which we will have the ability, which is actually part of a future construction project, to get a little more green space into that area. So that's a quick overview of Exhibit C. Exhibit D, if you'll go down to that one, is the front facade vision on this. The Tractor Supply on the left-hand side, that pedestrian walkway in the middle. They're showing again the all new LED lights. They're going to raise the current facade by 2 feet over the front to kind of provide just a touch of a highlight for the major anchor. Remember, you got 35,000 square feet between Tractor Supply and Beverage Depot, so that gives them opportunity for a major anchor and a minor anchor to fit in that space. Then you go over to the Beverage Depot side, and you can see that, and you can see kind of the similarity they're aiming for there with the old Office Depot style. It does require them to do stone on the bottom 4 feet, so there'll be some masonry elements there on the bottom as they redevelop that front. Exhibit E. So, and by the way, I'm not going to call that elaborate or anything, right? That's just a fairly basic facelift. Then you go out here and you look at this. This is what the wording of the ordinance refers to as a modified monument sign. And so I don't have poles holding it up, but I've got one monument on one side, I got another monument on the other side, and in between that I've got my series of signs for Beverage Depot, Tractor Supply, major anchor, minor anchor. There is some consideration that they might in the future use part of the parking lot for a pad site, maybe see if they could squeeze a restaurant in there. I'll say that I think that's a good idea from their point of view from a zoning allowance. I think it remains to be seen whether or not they really have the space to get a pad site on there, much less 3, but that's okay. Maybe they'll do a little Omni building or something out there. So they have some allowances to do that as well. So, Councilman Velasquez, I'm not sure if that's the overview we're hoping for, but that's a quick walk through the exhibits. And just to be clear about the enforcement of those, what happens is the way that Exhibit B is written. Exhibit B is the 2.5 pages of detail, and basically what that 2.5 pages of detail tell you is that it's going to be our municipal development director's job to say, okay, once you ask for a building permit to do anything at all out there or to obtain a CO out there, then what you basically are doing is turning in the updated versions of B, C, D, and E. As you can see right there, thank you, Dawn, for putting it right there for me. The municipal development director shall determine if any building permit requests are in compliance with attachments B, C, D, and E. And then the whole rest of the program runs for there. So those are regulatory elements, as any plan and any exhibit that's visual of that sort. Don't ever expect it to be perfectly 100% in line with that exhibit, but that's for example, or as we say, illustrative purposes. The portion that Greg read for you, that's the add-on section, so that would come at the end of Exhibit B. Exhibit B ends right now with a group called Additional Regulations. There's some requirement here related to masonry, an allowance for the municipal development director to approve minor variations if necessitated by the existing built conditions. And then it's got some wording there related to outside retail product storage. And then that last one that Mr. Schumpert read is the allowance associated with the side yard setback on the southeastern side. And so that's basically the add-in that we discussed.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Dawn. My one question for Mr. Fenner will be, I noticed there was a 7-1 vote. Who was the commissioner that voted against, and were there any specific comments that may allude to their vote?
Mr. Jones had voted against it. He had issue with the circulation of the property and just the site plan in general.
The circulation of the
For access, on another point of access off the south side, they said they were they would be negotiating that with Randall No on the southern portion, but there's nothing in writing at this point, so.
So recall the applicant is attempting to meet that request by our P&Z member. That's also an item that staff was concerned about. There's some language in it, attachment B, that we thought made sense, which was that the city engineer is going to be reviewing the fire lane and the cross access upon their application for building permits. And the applicant did willingly include on his updated Exhibit C, you might have noticed that little red hatched area that was on the map briefly. That little hatched area on the map says fire access easement or maybe hold for future fire access easement. And then they've actually secured an easement that they've submitted to our legal for review, which is basically the easement document which has been signed by the neighboring landowner. And so they have attempted to meet that request by our P&Z.
Thank you.
Mike or Mr. Finner, can you elaborate on the sidewalk? Is there anything in the highway corridor that specifies the sidewalk out front, just between the parking lot and I guess the green space?
Can I take the first cut at that, Charles? Because part of that sidewalk is entangled in the TxDOT construction project that's upcoming. And so I don't know that the applicant actually realizes this yet, but I think TxDOT is going to be working on some sidewalk issues in that area. So there's a little bit of a sidewalk that they're going to be responsible for. The sidewalk that they would have been required to do by highway corridor is that pedestrian walkway across the middle of the property through the actual parking lot. And then we'll have to coordinate the sidewalk they need to build on the front of the property with the TxDOT project to make sure we're not leaving gaps or having overlap. I don't need both TxDOT and the applicant building bits and pieces of sidewalk out there.
So, no, good comment. Okay. Grady or Councilwoman Velasquez, any other comments? And certainly there's discussion after the second, if there is a second. Do you have anything you would like to add now, Mr. Simpson?
No, sir.
Okay. With that being said, this is a discuss and consider item. This is ordinance number 2874. Is there a motion?
I move to
Mayor,
approve.
go ahead, Councilwoman.
I move to approve ordinance number 2874 on first reading with the added language as described in attachment B and read into the record by Brooke Shumpert, City Attorney.
Okay, there is a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, this is a discussion item, and this is not going to have a question at the end. This is a staff. This item does not move forward in the spirit of highway corridor. While the zoning gained is great, undoubtedly, and we are grateful for the reinvestment, I would ask P&Z to scrutinize the plans more and to make sure they're moving within the spirit of the zone. So this development is lacking, and Mr. Sims was very upfront about it. It is a mixed bag, but it is lacking gusto and specificity, and it is a lackluster project at best. So the direction to staff here in open session is, because our exhibit C, D, and E is less than legal certainty, we would ask staff to maintain the highest quality when this comes back to them. So with that being said, it is really on staff to withhold the standards on this property, and you're expected to hold them to this standard, which is mild at best. That is my statement.
I think the best thing for staff to say is we hear you, and we can follow that request.
Okay, I appreciate it. If there are no more comments, we had a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Item 11.7. We're going to conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding amending Appendix 1 Fee Schedule Ordinance of the City of Terrell, Section 42, City Departments Recoverable Cost by revising paragraphs imposing engineering review and inspection fees for development, redesigning, and constructing public improvements. John.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There are two types of fees that cities typically collect in relationship to development in the early stages. That's engineering review fees. Engineering review fees include looking at plans, whether those are engineering plans, floodplain plans, traffic plans, different kinds of plans that are submitted that are required with any kind of a process before they can be platted. And the second thing is an actual inspection fees. Inspection fees are when things are actually built. In the case of inspection fees in this context, it means infrastructure that's going to be dedicated to the city, public infrastructure. So when a development, a subdivision builds streets, water lines, sewer lines, sidewalks, street lights, drainage, and then at the end of that process, when the plat is approved and then the public improvements are accepted by the city, that becomes city property. So it's very important to have a good inspection process, and that's a potentially timely and expensive process. The very usual way to assess engineering fees is just a flat dollar amount, and then usually an additional amount per acre beyond 1 acre, and that's what we're recommending here. In this case, the standard fee is $1,000, and this is what the existing ordinance says is $1,000. We also have an additional fee of $75 per acre over 1. So that goes beyond the typical fee. For the $1,000 fee, you get 3 inspections, or 3 reviews, excuse me, 3 engineering reviews. It's really typical that when you submit something, especially if it's a big project, a big complicated project, you're almost always going to have to kick it back a couple of times. Once you get it kicked back the second time, which it's already been reviewed 3 times by city staff, then you need to pay an additional fee, and so we're recommending an additional fee for the 4th review of $750. We've also got a provision in there that if for some reason that the engineering review is done by a contractor as opposed to the city, then that the city hires, that City of Terrell hires, then rather than paying the fee, the applicant would reimburse the city for its out-of-pocket expenses, whatever those costs may be. In the same way, the typical way of doing the inspection fees is based on a percentage. Fees vary anywhere from 1% to 5%. The typical city in this area and across Texas is 3%. We're recommending 3.5%. The average of the cities we looked at was 3.5%, so we're right at the average on that. And also, if for some reason inspections are done by an inspector either hired by the developer, in a lot of cases, the developer hires their own inspector, or the city does for some reason, then again, we would get reimbursed for our costs. So we may be made completely whole. In both cases is the effort. So this is hopefully an effort to recoup for the city, whether it's an in-house work or out-of-house work, or a combination of the two, that the city's made whole for its cost. That's all I have in case you have any questions after the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, John. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of these changes? Hearing none, is there anybody here to speak in opposition of these changes? That being said, the public hearing is closed. We are now at 7.13, and John is still here with us. Sorry, 7.12, which is ordinance 2865.
But I'll be here for 13 too.
Hey, he'll be here for 13. Sorry, getting ahead of myself.
The one I've been waiting for.
John, do you have anything to add?
No, sir.
Okay. So with that being said, this is just a procedural good update.
Correct.
Okay. Great. Then I would ask Councilman Simpson and Councilwoman, do you have any questions of Mr. John Godwin?
No questions.
No questions, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, great. So with that being said, I will entertain a motion for ordinance 2865.
Shall I read that one, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, we're going to have Mr. Shumpert read that header into the record.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council, we will bring to you tonight ordinance number 2865, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Terrell, Kaufman County, Texas, amending Appendix 1, Fee Schedule Ordinance of the City of Terrell, Section 42, City Departments Recoverable Costs, by revising paragraph C, imposing engineer review and inspection fees for developments, designing and constructing public improvements, providing for the repeal of all previous outdated and conflicting fee schedules, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you, Mr. Shumpert. With that being said, we will entertain a motion on 2865.
I move to approve ordinance number 2865 as it appears on first reading.
All right, Councilwoman has made a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Mr. Simpson is seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
We are now at the highly awaited 7.13, we are now going to conduct another public hearing to receive comments regarding, you know what? Mr. Shumpert is going to read the header for 7.13 into record.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we will conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding repealing Chapter 4, Building Regulations, Section 22, Regulations of Signs, Banners, and Awnings of the Terrell City Code of Ordinances in its entirety by the addition of a revised sign code, a copy of which is attached here to as Exhibit A and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing a penalty, providing an effective date, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance was considered was open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Mr. Shumpert. Mr. Godwin.
Just one comment, if I may. A lot of people don't realize that Mr. Shumpert actually has a part-time job on working for Books on Tape. So this is also an update of an existing ordinance. This ordinance is older than the other one, quite a lot older. It's also much more out of date. And there's three big purposes for this. One of those is simply that construction processes, sign standards, practices, those have changed over the last 20 years since this ordinance was last updated. There's also a number of judicial findings that have changed what you can and can't do with sign ordinances. Once upon a time, you could tell people you can only have one political sign in your yard, and you can only have it up there for so many days out of the year, and that's no longer legal according to judges' rulings. And then also, there's just different construction standards. And then finally, we're also trying to update the nature of signs and signage, how they work and how they're presented and where they're put and so forth and so on. For the city of Terrell, it's part of the upgrade of the city of Terrell. Signs are very important. They're constitutionally allowed and they're necessary. They help with traffic flow. They help people find where they're going. They help businesses live and thrive, but they can also become blight. They can also become a problem and even a safety issue. So sign codes are very important. This one's a very important code. I'll start with applicability, first of all, and I won't go into a lot of details. The Planning and Zoning Commission's talked about this 3 times in quite a lot of detail. It was approved 8-0, not 7-1, if that helps any. Just to talk about what this includes, because every single sign you can imagine is not necessarily covered by this ordinance. Exterior observation only, so it doesn't count that sign. It doesn't count signs you can't see from outside. So if you've got a bunch of signs inside of a restaurant, if you can't see them from outside, the city doesn't care. The city doesn't have authority to care. Only if it's it doesn't have to be on the outside of the building, but you have to be able to observe it from the outside. Government signs, protective signs, these don't cover stop signs. They don't cover any kind of a typical government sign, whether it's state, local, or federal signs. Special temporary signs, there's a lot of these, and I won't go into but specialized, very small, casual signs. You don't want to write a bunch of ordinances trying to regulate all that stuff. It's just too much to do. It becomes too administratively overbearing. Off premises versus, these next two things are really important. On versus off premise. Off-premise signs is actually deleted. References to off-premise signs is deleted. This is one of those judicial things that came out in the last, sometime in 2020, fairly recently. And so the current Terrell ordinance actually says you can do this if it's an on-premise sign. So in other words, you can put a big sign at your store saying, we sell widgets here. We've got the best widgets in town, and it's on your property, versus a sign that's just as big, that's a mile down the road. Then it becomes an ugly billboard, and it's off premises, and you can outlaw those. Well, now you can't distinguish between the two of them. If it's a sign, it's a sign. That kind of goes along with that next one, content neutrality. That's another big change that was made judicially, and that's more about 10, 12 years ago. It's a little older. But you can't treat political signs differently than garage sale signs or estate sale signs or Mary Kay signs or widget signs. Content's not supposed to matter. And there's a few exceptions to that, but basically, if you couldn't read the words, if you were illiterate, or if you didn't speak the language of signs, you should be able to enforce the ordinance without knowing what it even says, because it's supposed to be content neutral. So those are very important things, and so that's part of the updating process for this. Definitions, I won't go through all the definitions. There's 84 definitions in there. That's really a lot. And just as kind of as an example of how much the ordinance has changed, Some of the existing ordinance is still in here. You got it, when you got this 6 months ago for the first time, you may remember it was in blue and black. The black was the old, and about a third of this, maybe more like a fourth or a fifth of this is still the old ordinance. But 84 different types of signs are defined. 48 of them are new definitions out of that 84. 25 of those that are revised, so almost all the definitions have changed or are brand new. I want to mention 4 of those. Billboard signs. Billboards, again, kind of going back to that location. If it's a great big sign, if it's a billboard, if it's a big pole sign, we all know what billboards look like. Whether it's at the property where they sell those widgets or if it's down the highway, you can't treat them differently. You can treat them differently based on other factors, if they block traffic, if they cause problems, if they're not safe, those kinds of things, but not because of the content of them. Monument signs are something we're really trying to push more and more of. That's a pretty standard quality sign. A lot of cities, especially if you go to the Metroplex, you know that. I worked in Rowlett back a long time ago. Because I'm old, and that was a big deal. That, we were kind of on the leading edges. All signs had to be monument signs. Everybody pushed and pushed. McDonald's is not going to take down they'll never come to town and to Rowlett if they can't put up their 2,900-foot tall golden arches, but they put a monument sign because that's all there was. And so more and more, especially in your downtown area and in certain other areas away from the highway, you want to go with monument signs. And so we really stress monument signage in this. Highway signs, we already talked about that too. Same thing. A new definition for highway signs. Highway sign itself was not even listed, so it's a whole new definition. And then reader board signs. Reader boards is an example of a change there based on technology and how things are done. The old ordinance, a reader board sign is kind of like, I like to compare it to baseball scoreboards. When you used to put a number on a hook to keep the score, that's kind of what the ordinance compares, manually changing the prices on the gas station by changing the big numbers you put on a hook. That's how old your ordinance is right now. So please vote for a new one. But now, so you still got manual reader boards are described in here, but you also got electronic reader boards in here. And that's 2 types. That's the kind that just changes the numbers when gas prices go up every few days here, or come back down someday, hopefully. But also the kind that do other things like messages and signs and people talking and dancing and stuff like that. We've got some definitions for that, and then we'll get to the restrictions on those here a little bit later on. Anybody questions so far? Well, maybe my battery died. A number of sections, and I won't go through a whole lot of details on these either, unless you need them. General regulations, this is on page 15 to 16, 15 and 16. And these are just kind of the categories that they're in, the general regulations for all types of signs, and not go into any of the specific things really, but general stuff is just the maintenance, location, content neutrality. You have to take care of them. You can put them in certain places. You can't put a sign right on the property line and block, the view of a citizen's house. You can't put up lights that are going to shine into somebody's bedroom window, or you can't put up lights that are going to cause a traffic accident or stuff like that. So on electrical, you have to follow the electric code. You can't interfere with residential, as I just said. And then the electronic display, one of the restrictions we have on electronic displays, there's two that we really have in place to limit that, or control that, or manage, that's the best word, is for one thing, you can't change your message but every 10 seconds. And the reason for that is if it's changing really often, it's distracting for travel, and it can cause accidents because people will see it and it'll distract them, or they'll try to read it, they'll try to read the next one. Every 10 seconds, depending on the speed, typically you're going to go past the sign before it changes. So 10 seconds, a standard is 8, but we're recommending 10. And the other one of those is between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m., you can't change at all. If you live or you're staying in a motel or a hotel or some kind of lodging or whatever, a hospital someday, close to a flashing sign between midnight and 6, it can still be lit up, but it can't be changing at all. You don't want to be trying to sleep and every 10 seconds it changes on you, because you can certainly see that, and I've dealt with that once in my life, and it's not comfortable at all. Safety, obviously, no physical or physical obstructions. You can't block people's view. You can't block people's ability to walk on a sidewalk or drive on a road safely. No movement, no flashing lights, like the same kind of thing. You got flashing lights, strobe lights, stuff moving and swinging around. It's going to distract people and cause problems, safety issue. Construction, you have to follow the building code. You have to build quality stuff. You can't just throw stuff up. People try to do that sometimes. Like, well, it's not a building. It doesn't matter how badly I build it. Well, it does, especially if it falls down. And wind safety is super important. There's standards in here for wind safety. You have to meet certain standards. The bigger the sign, the better. It's amazing the type of wind load you can get on a sign sometimes. Those big flat signs, billboards, but not just those sizes, but even smaller signs. And you've all seen that in a really heavy windstorm. Doesn't have to be a tornado. In a heavy windstorm or just a heavy wind, you'll see a sign flying down the road, and it can cause a lot of damage to property and to humans both. And maintenance, you have to take care of it. If you've got a problem, it's like any other code enforcement violation in Terrell. Code enforcement goes out and says, you're in violation of the code. You got 10 days to fix it. If you don't fix it, we'll fix it for you and send you the bill. If it is too deteriorated to fix, then it has to be demolished or removed. Permitting and review. Permitting and review is pretty simple stuff. For what it's worth, permitting reviews on pages 17 to 19. For temporary signs, it tells you how long they can be up. They can be up for 7 days, they can be up for 28 days, they can be up for 6 months. In some cases, temporary signs can be up maybe twice a year. Certain types, they can be up for 2 weeks in Christmas and 2 weeks in the summer, different things like that. But there's timing for temporary signs. You have to be inspected. Certain kinds of signs have to be inspected. You don't have to go inspect a garage sale sign, but you have to inspect a billboard and certain other kinds of signs to make sure they're safe, especially when they're built. You'd have to get a permit and have to have it inspected to make sure it's safe. It's not going to cause anybody problems. Some signs are going to be reviewed as part of a PD or an SUP. You've had, I guess both of those have been talked about tonight at least, when I was drifting in and out. PDs and SUPs have specific standards for signs, and so you have to follow what the P&Z and the City Council approves for a PD or an SUP. And overlays as well, which I'll talk about probably later if I remember correctly. If you submitted something in error as part of your permit, or if you lied on your permit, there's no process where you have to go 60 days to fix it. You just lose your right to have a sign immediately. So it can be revoked immediately by staff. Doesn't have to go to P&Z or to a board of adjustment or a review board or anything like that. If it's non-compliant, if it's unsafe, again, you've got 10 days to get it fixed, unless it's just immediately dangerous. And if it's immediately dangerous, just like any other code enforcement issue, you can have it immediately removed. The code enforcement staff of the city can get it done now, and if that's not an immediately removal, then the city can do it and send them a bill for it. Obsolete signs have 60 days. Obsolete signs tend to be businesses that went out of business. You see that in a lot of towns. I don't know if you have them here, but you see a sign and it's like, oh, I remember when that was opened back in 1974. The sign's still there. Well, now with this ordinance, you've only got 60 days to get rid of it. Unless it's a historic sign, it doesn't need to be there. It doesn't serve a purpose other than to make old guys wish they weren't old. Specific sign regulations, there's a number of pages of those. Specific sign regulations begin on page 19, and they go through page 36. There's a lot of those. And these are just a few of the highlights that I wanted to mention there. In the single family section, you can't light up signs in a neighborhood. You're not supposed to do that. So keeping a neighborhoody. Keeping it quiet, keeping it dark at night. No detached signs in neighborhoods except for monument signs. You can have a monument sign saying this is, Oakland Hills or whatever it is, but you can't have a whole bunch of signs in a neighborhood. It's supposed to look and feel different from other parts of town. Temporary for new developments. That means what we're talking about there is if somebody comes along and builds a new subdivision, they can put temporary signs up for a period of time, 12 months, 18 months, depending on what it is, so that people know there's a new subdivision, know what they've got for sale, so forth and so on. But it's a temporary thing only during construction of that new development. Multifamily, the biggest one there is you can get one monument sign up to 300 feet. Per 300 feet, that's per 300 feet of building. So a lot of these are a ratio, building to the sign. So the more space you've got, either the bigger your building or the more frontage you have on the road, the bigger your sign can be. Same thing with institutional, 32 square feet per street frontage. So if you've got 32 feet of more and more, institutional in this case includes churches, schools, those types of traditional institutions. In the next group of specific signs, business sites, you can have one flat to wall sign, the ratio again based on the size of the business, and if it's 7 businesses in a strip center, there's multiple signs, of course. They can have that based on how much space they have. You have one permanent detached sign. There's a lot of discussion here about detached versus attached. Detached are again mostly going to be monument signs. It can be illuminated because it's a business, building facades, shopping centers, industrial parks. There's a sign district overlay that takes precedence over the code. So we've got that in there specifically in these areas, in these building shopping centers, the PD, the overlay district, the SUP, those take precedence over this ordinance. So that's the one way, or one of the three ways in which this ordinance can be overruled. Central business district, there's specific ratios there as well. Temporary real estate, kind of talked about that already. Just some examples there that I can't read because the picture's in the way, but that's okay. Specific sign regulations, the last specific sign regulations, these are just a list of the last bunch that are on pages 24 to 36. Attached signs, detached signs, there's specific standards for all those depending on where they are. Flags, I got a half a page of regulations on flags, and you think, well, that's kind of crazy, but a flag that's a mile high or a mile wide is going to cause a problem. And if you've got 100,000 signs on one little 1 acre lot, that's too many. There's a limit to that. Now, you can't base it generally on content. So if it's a Ford Motor Company sign or a United States flag, not sign, flag, there's not much, you can't really distinguish between those too much anymore. Remember, we're supposed to be doing content neutrality. Temporary signs, talked about temporary signs, illumination, how that has to be done. There's really specific standards for lumens and foot candles and how much light can escape your property so it doesn't bother the neighborhood or other people around you. Highway signs, we already talked about. Digital billboards, we already talked about. Any questions on any of that? I'm going fast.
Those are Canadian signs.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. And so then there's a section about prohibited and non-conforming signs. There's a list, which we won't go through unless you want to, but a list that shows you these are all prohibited. One of those that's prohibited is you can't have commercial signs in residential. You've got some now. I'll talk about that in a minute on the other side of this page. But you don't want to have a bunch of commercial signs. Again, like you don't want to have lights, you don't want to have billboards, you don't want to have certain things in neighborhoods because it's supposed to be a neighborhood. And so over time, you'll get rid of commercial signs in residential areas. Dark skies, you have a dark skies ordinance here. I don't know if you call it a dark skies ordinance. That's what I'm used to in other places. And that dark skies ordinance is still in place, so it's going to have priority. If it's more stringent than the standards I put in here for not letting light spill over into the neighbor's property, then the dark skies ordinance will take priority over this. Enforcement is just like a code enforcement case by ordinance. It's the city manager. Of course, the city manager delegates that to code enforcement or maybe some other folks as time goes by, but he or she has the authority to do that, and that's just a technical issue with the ordinance. Sign district overlay, we've already talked about that. And then here's one that's new too. We talked about this several months ago, if you recall. We're making it to where you can't put signs on city property. City can, be clear, but if you're used to having, I know some say used to, I know who it was Lucas, where he used to work. At Lucas, and they still miss him, by the way, they would have like thousands of signs on City Hall property, just out in front of City Hall, signs everywhere. They also allow them up and down rights of way. So what's in here now, you can't put signs on city property. City property means rights of way too. So keep that in mind. So if you want to put I love Donald Duck sign, you've got to put it in your yard, not out in the street right of way. The reason for that is it helps clutter, but also when you start putting out in the right of way, you get too close to the road, you can cause some traffic issues, you can cause some clutter issues, you can solve some safety issues, you can cause drainage problems, you can cause all sorts of issues. So that's something that's new in there too. And then non-conforming, this is pretty typical stuff, but once this ordinance passes, there will be some signs out there that are in existence right now and they're legal under today's ordinance. They will be grandfathered. They will continue to be legal. They will be legal non-conforming uses. As long as they stay the way they are, they can stay there indefinitely. 60% of them is demolished or altered, then they have to go away. They lose that grandfathering. If they're illegal now, they're illegal in the future. There's a process in there for amortization. I don't know that you've ever done this or y'all have maybe talked about this as a group. It's fairly rare for cities to do this, but you can actually go in and you can amortize signs. Cities sometimes do this with billboards. In Fairview, we do this with billboards. They decided they don't want any billboards at all. So they went to the people, and there's a provision in state law, and there is in your ordinance here, that you can amortize this, which means you figure out, you calculate the value that they have a right to get from their signs, and then you can write them a check and say, okay, here's your money, tear them down. Or you can say you've got 6 years or 5 years or 11 years to move those out. You'll probably never do that, but sometimes you'll have a really bad area that you don't want them to stay grandfathered forever. So the state law gives you an out, just in case you need it. Abandoned, obsolete signs, talked about that a little bit too. There's ways you can get rid of that. And then if it's a sign that's supposed to have been permitted, you find out it didn't get a permit, they can't just come back and say, oh, you didn't catch us, we get to keep it up. You can't, and people will do that probably in this city too. When you're building a house or you're building a porch, you do it on the weekend, you hope you don't get caught, so you don't have to pay for a building permit. In this case, you actually have to move the sign down. And then finally, appeals and variances. This is important for this. So you can make any group of people that you choose to be the Board of Appeals. It could be the P&Z, it could be you, it could be a whole new board. Staff recommended that be your existing zoning board of adjustment. Doesn't have an S on the end. Zoning Board of Adjustment or Zoning Board of Appeals. And the commission unanimously agreed with that. They have three authorities. Usually we only think about one with the Board of Appeals, and that's appeals. But you also can appeal staff decisions. So if Charles or the code enforcement officer says that's not legal, you can go and say, I think he made a mistake or she made a mistake, and let this group make that decision for you. They can find exceptions for certain cases. If there's some unusual thing they don't think is applicable, they can rule an exception. Exceptions are only good for that one specific thing. And then variances, which is the normal thing for the ZBA or a BOA, whatever you call it. I think you call it a ZBA here. But specific circumstances are required. It can't just be, gee, I want a sign, feel sorry for me, give it. And so that's in the law that it has to be for a specific occurrence. I think that's my last slide. Yes, it is.
John,
So any questions? Yes, sir.
That was huge.
Thank you very
I
much.
didn't think anybody could have a longer presentation than Finner, but you proved us wrong.
Well, it is 40 pages long.
Okay.
And I did put it in 10-point font so it look smaller than it actually is.
So I probably have questions, but we're going to get to them in the next item. We're going to go ahead and open the public hearing just for the sake of moving it down the line. We're going to open this public hearing on 7.13. Mr. Shumpert is going to help us open this hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the council. We will conduct a public hearing to receive comments regarding repealing Chapter 4, Building Regulations, Section 22, Regulations of Signs, Banners, and Awnings of the Terrell City Code of Ordinances in its entirety by the addition of a revised sign code, a copy of which is attached hereto as Exhibit A, and made a part hereof for all purposes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing a penalty, providing an effective date, and finding and determining that the meeting at which this ordinance was considered was open to the public as required by law.
Thank you, Mr. Shumpert. We will open this public hearing. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of changing the sign ordinance? No one coming forward. Is there anybody here in opposition of changing the sign ordinance? With no one coming forward, public hearing closed. We are moving on to 7.14. Mr. Godwin has to repeat himself. No.
So Mayor and Council, I'm going to say I really thank John for working on this project. I'm going to call this a tedious project that I was so glad to have a highly skilled consultant dive into. I think one of the biggest parts of John's job here was to collect comments from Charles Fenner, Bobby Phillips, Steve Rogers, myself, Mary Gail Ramsey, Greg Shumpert, and just make sure all of that information got in there. He was in front of your Planning and Zoning Commission, I think 3 different times on this project. He presented to you on this project. He went to go meet with the Chamber of Commerce and the EDC on this project. He's gone to get all of the input he needed to get to make sure that we had a good, strong, modern sign ordinance. I highly recommend it to you, and I'd say I'll pass it back to you, Mayor.
Okay, great. Mr. Simpson or Councilwoman Velasquez, any comments or questions?
No comments, no questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simpson. Councilwoman?
No comments, no questions.
Okay, question. So, illumination, so we talk about the electrical code. Does that provide a certain specification of illuminations at night? So when I think of illuminating signs, we have one church, which would be grandfathered, and one car dealership, which would be grandfathered, that have really bright signs. Is that covered in the new sign ordinance?
Yes. It can be so bright, and the main thing about brightness typically depends on the location, but it's a matter of overflow into somebody else's property, so that if you're at a house or even a business, if it's going to affect you or not.
We can do it now, too, if we need to. It should be there shouldn't be anything above.
Yeah, I'm going to count on.
I'm not going to present for you, Mayor. But we also have a
Yeah, I'm going to say that there's a damaged sign on US 80. There's a sign on Bryn that might be the one you're thinking of. That's an illuminated sign. There might be another one that I'm not thinking of right now. We've got a handful of signs that after this has a second reading and we approve it in that form, I actually do want Charles to go out and work on some enforcement on. So if you have a enforcement sign related item, that's a great little piece of information to send to staff.
And two things about that, not to cut you off, I'm sorry. One is the item about the electric code is, that's the standard, whatever codes you have in place, your international electric code or whatever it is, that you're meeting the electrical standards, not performance standards, but the actual construction standards. The other thing is to remember, if you've got, like, if one of those signs you're talking about now, and I have no idea, if they're not in compliance with your existing ordinance now, they would not be grandfathered. They just need to be shot or something like that. Not the owner, just maybe the lights.
Okay, and with that being said, man, this was a hefty agenda, and I reviewed most of it, but I have not gotten through your entire sign ordinance. So with that being said, I'm gonna ask a question that's probably in here.
Okay.
You know the answer. So the question is, right now, I'm gonna pick on Taco Bell at the moment.
Okay.
Taco Bell has a sign, I'm gonna call it a pole sign. You might call it a monument sign. What is that definition?
Well, a pole sign includes a lot of different things, and so I almost was on the right page. A pylon sign.
Pylon.
We include pylon signs.
Yep, sorry, John, when I'm talking about.
Yeah, so
right
pole
now-
sign, any permanent detached sign supported by, from, or on top of a vertical framework consisting of one or more uprights supported by the ground. So a pylon sign is a type of pole sign. But what you're talking about, just a pole sign.
Is that allowed under the new ordinance?
It is in certain places. It's allowed at a business. It's allowed it can be allowed in a PD or an SUP or those kinds of things.
Here's my comment. I guess I'll get closer to the mic. So my comment is, man, when we talk about raising standards, certainly this ordinance is raising the standards.
Well, I think I just told you something wrong too about.
Yeah, I want to say that I think that the rule is we're all monument sign now. On the other hand, you have a allowance for what might be called a highway sign, and that, you know, I'm also having to abide by TxDOT regulations.
Sure.
So I'll let John find the specific on this, and I think I'll say the generality
No,
collectively.
that's okay,
The
yeah.
generality is, in general, we're only allowing monument signs.
That's correct.
The variation of that is I still have to obey by the TxDOT rules related to billboards, which means I have a limited number of places where you can do what I would call a giant pole sign, which is really just I still have to allow some billboards.
So-
How'd I do, John?
I wasn't listening, but sounded good. So yeah, let me go backwards. I'm obviously fuzzy, but yeah, specifically, in fact, on page 38, it says, number 20, and this is under the signs that are not allowed. This is under the prohibited, any pole sign or billboard except along any limited access freeway or tollway or in an industrial or technology zone area. So those are the only exceptions. So to answer your question is, it's not allowed at future Taco Bells.
Okay, so in the sign I'm talking about is supported, it's one pole, and it comes up and it has a big, like, John Godwin's Taco Hut, and that's it. So that's not allowed.
Correct.
So
So that one would be grandfathered, but you couldn't build new ones.
that would be grandfathered.
Right.
Or they.
Unless it's in an industrial park for some reason or one of these other exceptions.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure that, for me, one of five, right? I want to make sure that we are moving towards if you've gone to the Woodlands, which is an extreme example, but if you go to the Woodlands, and you have an example here that the Canyon Creek Church here, that the signs are like that, or out at Crossroads, where it's not the huge 100-foot,
Yeah, it's kind of the example I was giving at McDonald's in Rowlett. You know, they do the whole, no, you can't do that, it's horrible, we'll all go out of business, but they don't really. It's like back when you first passed the smoking ordinance, everybody says, oh, my restaurant's gonna go out of business, but they never do. So yeah, that is
I
exactly.
still know where Chick-fil-A is.
That's,
Still get there. Okay, so does this ordinance move forward in that fashion, or is it still?
in,
But it's based off, if you have 500 foot of frontage, you could have a 30 or 40, what is it?
The
language that John read, I think, is answering your question.
Yeah,
It has to be a monument sign unless you have a limited access roadway, which is Interstate 20, spur 557, and that
Little bit of
chunk
80.
of 80 that's out on the west
or
side of town.
industrial or technology, and those are the only
Yeah.
exceptions.
Okay, okay, I think that satisfies my question. Okay,
And I don't want to get off the subject, but there's one thing I missed to say at the very end that I didn't on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Commission. They had 3 or 4 changes at the last second when they recommended. One of those was they wanted to include Highway 80, not just where it's limited access, but beginning at CR 237, what is it, Metro across that 237. They want to start there going west and allow pole signs, billboards, and that part of Highway 82. That was in their recommendation to you, so.
okay, tell me again, they want
So
to,
starting at Metro, CR 237 on Highway 80,
yes,
all the way west. The way the original ordinance was drafted was it has to be a limited access road, which would be the piece of 80 on the other side of 557 and I-20. So this just makes another, I don't know, what is that, another mile or 2 of Highway 80 would be allowed to have pole signs and
I don't
billboards.
care for that.
Yeah, I didn't think it mattered, but that was part of the recommendation. It got left out, I noticed when I was proofreading this.
Yeah.
This afternoon, so I just wanted to convey that they asked for that.
Wow, okay. Man, we need to upgrade to Zoom Pro.
Looks like we're about to lose Councilman
Okay,
Johnson.
so, okay, we'll figure that out in a second. Okay, so with that being said, if I wanted to make a motion and leave that part out because there's future growth there, how do I do that?
You just recommend, or not recommend, you'd make a motion to approve as presented with an addition on the. there's a speci- it's
John,
yes, sir.
did we accidentally leave the P and Z request out? Is that what you're telling me?
That one particular thing, yes. So you could recommend as recommended by P and Z if you want to do that.
No. What you want to do is you want to vote as shown in the packet. Because if that edit was left out of the packet, then can we just move to approve as shown in the packet?
Except the packet's is missing from the packet.
He wants to exclude the
I
P
want
and
to
Z recommend.
exclude it because I believe that.
He doesn't agree with P and Z.
Oh,
I
okay,
don't-
you're
I
not
don't-
going along with that change.
I don't agree with
Well, then,
it,
yeah,
only
just as what-
because.
approve what
I'm
you have
not-
in your packet.
Council doesn't vote on just now, council votes on what's good in 5 years and 10 years.
Right, okay.
I don't care to exclude it.
But we got it. So
Yeah, just what's in here is.
your motion is as shown in the council packet.
Fine. I'm going to make that motion. I will make a motion. You know what? I wasn't prepared to make motions.
Just the council,
Is it ordinance?
to it.
Okay. I move to approve item number 7.14 as presented in the council packet as of July the 20th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in
second.
favor signify by saying
Aye.
aye. Motion carries.
Mayor, on the advice of the amount of time remaining in this meeting, I'm going to suggest that we table items 8.1 and 8.2. Those are your 2 board and commission items. We can come back to those at a later date.
Do we have an executive session?
No, sir.
Hey, Ronnie, do you want to table 8.1? We have a candidate, and it's up to you, and that's a 30-second ad if you want to add it, and if not, we'll table it.
I'm going to go ahead and table until the next meeting.
Okay, can I get a motion on 8.1?
I move to table Section 8, Boards and Commissions.
Okay, there's a motion. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, all those approve? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. 8.2, need a motion to table?
She just did.
Oh, she just
She
did.
did them both.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, we have covered 9.1, we have covered 9.2, 9.3.
Charles Finner is now going to cover item 9.3. Great job, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9.3 is a construction plat approval. I'd call it routine.
Sorry.
It's a routine item. It's 5 acres out of the John C. Hale survey. I believe it comes to you, well, I'll let Charles pick up from here.
Yeah, let me get there, I'm so sorry.
You're going to be on
Rogers
agenda,
and
on,
Clark,
yeah,
9.3.
there you go.
5.7 acres.
I was stuck on the, okay, the construction plat for 148 between Highway 80 and 20, the business circle there. We have, the applicant has submitted a construction plat, okay? For Rogers and Clark, the next steps are complete the public improvement. We're okay with the construction plat, okay? And it was approved 8 to vote. It's simple. However, I just wanted you to know the next steps. I try to put this in for you all the time, not that you're gonna remember this, but the next step are to complete any public improvements inspected and approved by the city engineer, submit a final plat for approval, and an optional construction, in lieu of construction, they can submit a letter of credit or surety bond with the engineering estimates approved by the engineer.
Beautiful. Any questions?
Approve the construction plat.
Okay. Council, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the construction plat as presented by Mr. Fenner in 9.3.
Make a motion to approve the construction plat for Rogers and Clark Edition, presented by Charles Fenner.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. 9.4.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I will tell you that most of what we put in this PowerPoint presentation is information I've covered before in executive session. We own an old hangar. It's at 800 Airport Road. That's the corner of Airport and Silent Wings. That's the old hangar that was part of our British training when they were here. I would like permission to start repairing this building. There's adequate fund reserve in the Airport Capital Fund and the Public-Private Partnership Fund. I believe, but I can't guarantee you, that we're going to get reimbursement for parts of this from the federal government for making this into a vaccination clinic. I need a drive-through location for both testing and for vaccination. If we do have a fall resurgence, I know that I won't be able to use the Trinity Valley Community College campus again, and I would like to be able to start renovations immediately on the hangar location here. So as I discussed before, we've had trouble finding a private sector leasee for this, and if I could get moving on renovating a portion of it, then we will make it in much better shape. We'll use it as a vaccination clinic, and then hopefully that will improve our ability to use it for a lease in the future. And as I mentioned before, we would like to be able to rent it for $150,000 a year. To do that, I'm asking you to pass Resolution 1052. As discussed in executive session previously, we need to repair the roof. We need to repair the fire suppression system, and we need to add a set of bathrooms to it. We think that's going to cost about $500,000 for the section of the building that is the old hangar section only. And all I would like is permission to move forward on that. Resolution 1052 is set up to do that for you because it authorizes me to negotiate and execute contracts for those improvements, and it tells me where to get the money from. So that's Resolution 1052.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sims. Don, can I have the countdown clock? And also, I was the fussy council member that was disgruntled about this, but I have since changed my tune and I find value in the property. With that being said, 2-minute warning by the ref. I am looking for a motion on Resolution 1052.
Mayor Pro Tem, may I make a motion that we approve Resolution 1052?
Great. Got a motion to approve 1052 by Grady Simpson. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Ronnie Velasquez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. That brings us to the end